Hey everybody, it's Justin and welcome back to our BTR Garage. Today we're going to be doing a little bit of maintenance on my 2017 Subaru BRZ. I just hit 10,000 miles on the car after owning it a little over 2 years. If you can believe it, it took me that long to put all those miles on the car. But we're going to be doing the second oil change on the car, and we're going to be changing out the transmission fluid as well. I've got some new fluids to try out for both the engine oil and the transmission. We're going to go ahead and get started and show you what we've got. Now, taking a step back a little bit, when I first did an oil change on my Subaru BRZ, I was using this Royal Purple synthetic engine oil. I've used Royal Purple in a couple different cars in the past. I used it on my old 2013 FRS, and it did fine as far as I could tell. I really don't have the time to test a whole bunch of different oils and things like that. So this go around, instead of going and doing some internet research on oils and things like that, I went straight to Counterspace Garage, got their professional recommendations on oil. These guys, as you know, have a lot of experience in the 86 world with BRZs, FRSs, and 86 on the racetrack. So I trust their recommendations and what they recommended for my use case. Autocross with the occasional track day and of course daily driving is this Motul 300V OW20 oil, and that's what we're going to put in the car this go round. This is racing oil intended for high performance driving purposes. So the Motul 300V is what we're going to be going with for the engine oil. And then on the transmission oil side, like I said, we're going to do the transmission oil change as well. We're doing Redline fluids, which I have used on other cars in the past for the transmission. This time CSG recommended a little secret sauce special mix using Redline 75W90NS. This is the no-slip differential fluid that you would usually put in differentials. I've used this again on my other cars as well, the FRS as well as the BRZ, before I had the OS Geekin diff in there. But we're using 75W90NS mixed with the MT90 Redline transmission fluid. So those two mixed together is the Counterspace Garage recommended secret sauce. We're going to go ahead and get started here. I also almost forgot, have a Blackstone oil analysis test kit. So I'm going to take some of the oil out of the car, this Royal Purple oil that we had in the car before, take a little sample of it, send it back to Blackstone Oil to get an analysis on that. That will give us a little idea of how the engine is running, how it is wearing, and the oil condition and things like that. So another little kind of side project, and maybe we'll do an analysis video down the road on that. But for now, we're going to get under the car, drain out the fluids, and then get the new stuff put in the car. All right, taking a quick time out while the engine oil drains. The oil exploded all over the place and got everywhere. I did drive the car for quite a bit before draining the oil and doing the transmission. We haven't got to the transmission yet, but you want to have the oil warm when you're doing the Blackstone Labs test. It's part of their instructions. So when I was draining the oil, I stuck the little container underneath the drain flow, the oil drain flow, just to capture enough oil to fill up the little container here, like I said. We'll go ahead and mail that off here in a little bit and then get that oil analysis back. Now, when getting back under the car, I'm going to slow down the tape instead of doing a time lapse to show you what you need to do to drain the actual transmission fluid and then fill it back up, of course. So we'll get started on that here. So here we have our transmission fluid drain plug is on the bottom, of course. Our transmission fluid fill plug is up here on the top. You'll need a 10mm Allen head to get these off. We're going to remove the fill plug first. This is important on older cars, removing the fill plug first, because if that fill plug is stuck or seized, you don't want to drain the fluid because obviously you won't be able to fill it back up. So on our cars, most of them are pretty new or new-ish, that this shouldn't be a problem. Removing the fill plug, you'll hear it bleed out some air, but we'll take that, set it aside. We'll loosen up our drain plug on the bottom here, crack it loose, and hopefully move this oil drain pan. I don't want to get oil all over my camera. We'll see. Hopefully this doesn't come out as violently as it did with the engine oil. There we go. Whoa, all right. Almost got the camera. We'll go ahead and let this drain out. In the meantime, I'm gonna grab new washers for all of the drain plugs. All right, here are our drain plugs and fill plug, all cleaned up with fresh new washers on them. I'll put the part numbers to those washers down in the description as well. And of course, I also have an OEM Subaru oil filter, which we'll put on in just a few minutes as well. Right now, we're gonna head back under the car and install our drain plugs in the oil pan and the transmission and torque those down to spec. All right, our oil drain plug down here, this one is gonna be torqued to 29 foot-pounds of torque. And we'll reset our torque wrench to 27 foot-pounds of torque for the transmission drain plug. Go ahead and clean this up over here, and make sure when you put your drain plug back in that you're putting the correct one back in, the one that has the magnet on it. There is a magnet on the face of the drain plug there, so we'll put that one back in place. All right, now with the drain plugs torqued down and in place, we can start putting fluids back in the car. I'm gonna start off with the engine oil, the Motul 300V. Get that done. Obviously, I'm gonna swap out the oil filter as well real quick, and then we'll get into filling up the transmission fluid. The transmission fluid is filled up just like you would do the differential fluid. So you have to have some sort of pump, which I'll show you in a second, and pump the fluid up into the transmission. But let's get that engine oil changed first, and then we'll move on to the transmission. Now we'll get going on the transmission fluid. I have one of these little transfer pumps like this that you can pick up at an auto store, or I'll put the links in the description as well. This is what we'll use to pump the transmission fluid into the transmission. I've got a little cup here because we need to mix the 75W90NS with the MT90. So we're just gonna dump these guys into here. Take that underneath the car, and hopefully I don't make a giant mess with the open bottle, and then pump it into the transmission with the pump. The way you fill up the transmission, again, is just like the differential, and we'll try to show you back on the car. But the fill hole that is in the transmission, you fill it basically to the top of the fill hole, or the bottom of the fill hole rather, just so the fluid just starts pouring out of the transmission fluid fill hole. All right, we got our fluid down below us. Get our intake tube into the cup, which I don't think you can see down below here, but then our fill tube go up into the transmission. We can start pumping. So again, we're just going to keep filling up the transmission until it starts barely coming out of the bottom of the fill hole. So now we're just barely dripping fluid out of the bottom of the transmission fluid fill hole up here. It's kind of hard to see, but there is little drips of fluid, and you can kind of stick your finger up in there and feel that the fluid is up to the base of the bottom of the fill hole. That's when you know you are done. So we can go ahead and clean that up and then put our fill plug back into place. And then we'll also torque that one down to 27 foot-pounds of torque as well. All right, so we have the fluids filled back up in the car. the Motul 300V, the Redline 75W90NS, and the MT90 mix in the transmission. I think there's one more thing I want to do. I'm going to go ahead and get the car down, get everything cleaned up, and then we'll take it for a little test drive and see if I notice a difference in the shifting in the car. The engine oil, you usually can't tell much of a difference, but I think that new fluid in the transmission will be noticeable. So we'll jump in the car and take it for a spin. All right, we're gonna get the car out on the road. I got the transmission warmed up a little bit, just driving around a little. And initial impressions, you know, it's a little bit smoother. The gears engage maybe a little bit easier, but it's not a dramatic change. I mean, stuff like this usually isn't a dramatic feeling in gearboxes like we have in this particular car, but it feels all right. I mean, I can't say it's a huge change, but like I said, don't really expect a huge change, but there are little, you know, small differences that you notice, especially when the gear clicks into place. It's a little bit smoother as I'm driving it more here. All right, we'll make one more little run at it here. And yeah, like I said, it shifts a little bit better. It's a little bit smoother. Gears engage just a little bit easier, but nothing too dramatic. And really, I didn't expect anything too dramatic, like I mentioned earlier. So we'll go ahead and roll it back in here. All right, everybody, we're gonna wrap this video up. Some of the best fluids you can put in your Subaru BRZ, Scion FRS, or Toyota 86, or any other car for that matter, probably in a performance driving scenario. The Motul 300V for the engine oil, and then our Redline fluids MT90 and the 75W90NS. That one is a mouthful. The secret sauce mixture for the transmission. I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you have any thoughts, comments, or questions, please leave them down below. Like usual, hit up the links in the description if you're interested in these fluids for your car. I'm about to move on to my next project here in this off season, so stick around for more good stuff coming up soon. Stay fast out there. I am checking out. We'll talk to you all next time.